everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. Today I have with me David Pollet. Now, David has a mission to help retail media networks basically make sense of data. And we're going to find out what that really means. Really, it's about how to make more money out of e-commerce site and make sense of the information that the old media networks really have struggled with. David is the CEO of Incremental, a repeat entrepreneur with over 20 years of startup experience. His extensive history across startup environments and lessons he has learned from what he calls a mix of big wins and big fails. Sounds like life for everyone, really. David is a go-to-market growth leader with an experience scaling Saas startups. That's an acronym called Software as a Service startups and public company divisions ranging from 5 million to 100 million plus in annual repeat revenue. He's got 25 years experience in sales, marketing, and strategy leadership. He has a proven track record of accelerating growth during times of transition and a deep knowledge and experience transitioning transactional businesses such as media, arbitrage, and data sales into software as a service businesses. He's known for partnering closely with product engineering and finance to identify opportunities for innovation and profitable growth. So David's Incremental website and business is all about helping e-commerce identify opportunities and grow. David, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here too. Thank you for having me, Jeff.
So hopefully I described you accurately. I have a favorite saying, which I've mentioned to you before, is that if you see an acronym, shoot it. So we're going to try and as we know, digital landscape is full of acronyms, which most of the people outside the industry have no idea about. So we're going to try and make sense of the noise and also the industry. But you're about helping retail online businesses grow effectively and identify opportunities. So, David, how did you get to start what is quite a niche business, really? So tell us a little bit, a thumbnail sketch of, what you've been doing the last 25 years since you were born, because you're only 26, I think.
Yeah.
So tell us about your journey to where you are today a little bit. I'm intrigued by, because we all got mixed backgrounds but sometimes when you look back on the journey, you realize that it all makes sense in looking in the rear vision mirror, whereas you had no idea when you were starting where you were going. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Gosh, if I really think back to it, it's my cousin Harley, who I owe a lot to. I was not making good use of my college education. I had hair down below my my shoulders, and I was having a lot of fun. And he gave me a job for the summer in Boston. And he had a venture capital company. I showed up. The first thing he did was march me to the barber. The second thing he did was give me a gym membership and tell me I was fired if I didn't show up in the morning. And the third thing he did was put me in with his portfolio companies.
Wow.
And really let me go to work in startups that just needed hands and legs. And from all of that, I caught the bug. And so my first good gig out of college was working at a company that was 8 people. It was a startup in what we then called online advertising, right? We sold online ads. This was before there were even standard sizes. So I had a creative guy that would make the ads if I was able to make the sale.
What year was that?
97.
Yep. So the web is what? The browser is what, 3 or 4 years old by that stage. That's very early.
Netscape ruled the world. And from there I journeyed a little bit. I did a little bit on the marketing side, doing what we call digital marketing. I did that for LendingTree, joined them at about 18, did a 5-year stint at Bank of America, which I consider to have been serving time. And then hop back in, but this time I hopped in on, you call the vendor side, and just lucked into a job at a company that back then we didn't even call it machine learning. We came up with an acronym. I know you hate those, but we called it PO, Predictive Optimization Engine. That was just trying to use machines to make your advertising perform better.
Right.
And it was great. It was great. It had an incredible leader, and I learned a ton. And I caught the bug for trying to use machine learning to make things perform better for marketers, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And I could give you the rest of the companies, but that's it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the
Well,
gist.
that's great. It's a great thumbnail sketch, and it sounds like you're actually uh, you had an apprenticeship for what you're doing today.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt. And still rely on the leader of that company for advice on a regular basis.
Wow, very cool. So, what was, the call, the inspiration to start Incremental? What was it? Was it uh, a creeping realization, or was it an aha moment?
I wasn't hired to run Incremental. I was hired to run their sales. And at the time, they built a really, really good. So their name was Tradeswell, and they built an incredible automation layer, right? And what I mean is they were able to suck for a brand. So, I'm going to use a brand that's not a client of ours. So say Gatorade, right? Because I'm never allowed to talk about our clients. They were able to suck in, here's all the sales that happened on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Target.com, wherever they're placing their products and or advertising those products on those sites,
Yep.
right? And they solved a really big key problem, which was when you do that, there's a different identifier for every single bottle. The same bottle of Gatorade has 3 or 4 identifiers just on Amazon. They call them ASINs. That's Amazon's version of a SKU. Then you have it
Wow.
on Walmart, then you have it on Target, then you have it everywhere. And this company, without arms and legs, was able to suck all that in, create what we call the super SKU, and let you just look at the sales of that singular product across all the different marketplaces. Where I came in is I was quickly promoted to CEO, which was great, by our now executive chairman. And what we saw was I came from the media side. Retail media was huge, and it came out of nowhere.
Yep.
You're talking about getting to $50 billion twice as fast as search or social. I
Yep.
mean, just unbelievable. And all the measurement was provided by the recipient of the ad dollars,
Right.
meaning that the people who got the money told the people who spent the money, oh, yeah, this stuff's really working. It's doing great. And that alone was the inspiration to go, wait, we have all the data. We do a lot of cool stuff. Let's stop doing most of it. Let's do this one thing better than anything else. It was a
Right.
big risk. We shut down 70% of our revenue. We
Wow.
just dripped it away because that revenue would not have allowed us to be neutral. And if you look back through every media type, they always self-measure, and then someone always comes in and goes, there's going to be a neutral measurement. Brands always vote for a third party to tell you whether or not it's performing.
Yeah. And that's
And
and
so,
that's the, and that's the big problem, isn't it? With saying go to an agency, they're going, I'm going to spend money on Facebook, and they're going to tell you that you should increase your Facebook advertising. Why? Because they make more money. That, in fact, it might be the reverse. In fact, Facebook advertising is not working, for example. Is that
it,
correct?
I mean, it could be the agency, I mean, look, I want to say there's great intent. There's more good intentions than bad intentions
Yep.
throughout the industry. So I don't quite want to demonize, but it could be the agency. If it's only your search agency, they're obviously going to be keen on Google. If it's only your social agency, they're going to be keen on Facebook, right? That's just those biases exist. But more importantly, if you're trying to make sense of media, only having a view of Google or Facebook is like trying to predict the weather, knowing only today's temperature. You just
And
don't
you,
have the information,
yeah, trying
right?
to predict the weather in New York when it's actually trying to measure London.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, anyone can get London. It's rainy and cold. But sorry,
And
no,
great.
every time I visit, but I do love the city. It's beautiful.
My
And
favorite.
so we set out to build that. And we realized none of the current present day measurement methodologies were going to be of any use to anybody trying to transact on retail media. So this became a really big build out, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
that product graph I talked about, it became the underlying core of our entire strategy. If you didn't have that, you couldn't do what we do, and nobody in the measurement field has that. We'd
Okay.
already run four years of hard yards building that.
Right.
So
So you've actually taken the time to actually get the insights and the data to make sense of the advertising dollars spent or the channels, the multi-channels that you are actually in, because quite often online retail is very much about having multi-channel to market. In other words, you're on Amazon, you're actually got your own website, you're actually then offer affiliate deals as well, and the list goes on. So you guys have done a lot of hard work to actually collect data off the big platforms and beyond, so Amazon and so on. So how did you collect that data, or was that, a secret men's business?
yeah,
Yep. So how did you collect that? Is that because you had APIs into every platform?
no, I mean, so that's the first part. You start with the APIs, only the mature ones have those.
Yes.
Then you have to go scrape the portals, right? And you have to make sense of that. And in a lot of them, Jeff, to get to the problem, you have to do both.
Yes.
If you run a promotion on Amazon, they have a different SKU, a different ASIN, and you can only get that insight from the portal. The
Yep.
rest of your sales are coming through the API. So we combine those two capabilities. And then lastly, you have, RMNs, retail media networks, sorry, kill that. um, Retail media networks, um, they're in their infancy. So a lot of them literally just email you stuff once a week. So then we had to build code to open emails and
Mhm.
suck the data down. And they'd give you weekly. So then we had to use machine learning to predict daily sales to line up the data. So it's a lot of work,
Gosh.
right?
Yeah.
But it was fun work because when you got it right, you could unlock a bunch of really cool insights for brands and you could do it quickly. And that's the fun part.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're by, and this is what's great about digital. A lot of people maybe don't get it, but digital is really good. I was going to use the F word, but didn't. Um, the
Don't bother
it
me.
wouldn't bother me either. Anyway, um, what's great about digital is you can get data, and you just got to work out how to get it. But the fact is that in the past, like TV, they said, well, your ad worked well, but the only way to do that was like put in a code, and that code then goes through to the actual seller, and the seller goes, yeah, the ad was working because I've got the data out of the code that you put in. Now we've got, things like, you know, QR codes. We've got, basically different platforms you're selling on. So, and I'm going to go back to the API, application programming interface is what that means. So the API is really just a funnel and a connection into places like Amazon or big software platforms so that you can collect data and pass it backwards and forwards. Is that correct?
Yes, you can even give it instructions. I'm looking for this,
Yes.
right? So, which is kind of neat. It's a way for two different technologies to communicate with each other.
Yeah, so data's good in the fact that you can collect, I mean, digital's good because you can collect a lot of data. The next challenge is making sense of the data, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest problem that exists is the fact that everyone went, look, there's so much data, grab it all.
Yeah.
That's not how you go about getting data, right? And so, yeah, we built this and we really focused on automating it. So, of course, we started at the beginning. The machines would try to automate it, and then people would look at it and they'd go, "You got it wrong. You got it right. You got it wrong. You got it right." It was tedious for
Mhm.
and honestly, the team did this before I got here, and
Yep.
they did killer. I mean, the most attractive thing about this company to me was you had this engineering team that's worked together at 15 years, even on a company that they IPO'd. They're the smartest, most like they're just the best team ever. They're likable. They're open to business inputs and hearing what the market has, and they're just such good engineers that they don't have to talk. They know what each other's thinking. So they had built that, yeah, and made sense of the data. You're right. It's a big problem.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are going to offer your service to a client, obviously, and from what we've been talking about, it appears that you are talking to bigger e-commerce players. So one question I have is, what is your typical e-commerce customer profile? Do they have a certain level of revenue, like 10 million plus, 1 million plus? Where do you play generally? Where's your ideal customer?
Yeah, I mean, so we pretty much exist within the enterprise right now.
Yes.
Um, and only because the first iteration of this business had a lot of health and beauty clients. We're very strong there. I think about 70% of what's on the shelves at a pharmacy right now today represent clients of some form or fashion of ours. But we moved into CPG, and we'd really like to get into pets and technology next and hard goods. But you have to do new marketplace integrations with everyone. You
Yeah.
can't call somebody who's selling pet food and say, "Oh, we haven't got Chewies yet." Like you wanna help me sell pet food online, you already have to have the integration, the partnership with Chewy. So we're moving across vertical by vertical.
Right.
In terms of size, they're really big companies, and then there are some really small companies.
Yep.
Those more often found us. Those are really fun because you can really, really, really validate on the client side whether what we're telling you, we drove these incremental sales, they can see it.
Yep.
And so it's great. It's a sharp knife. You know what I mean?
Yep. And you
Um,
must really talking to the decision makers rather than just the middle management.
you know what? I mean, we'll talk to anybody who has the same religion we have, which is there is a way to figure out what's truly incremental. There's a way to optimize to it. And
Yep.
the metrics today that are used are not accurate. Um,
Yep.
but to make the investment in us, there needs to be some executive sponsorship because they have to approve granting us access to the data, and that usually takes a certain level of authority in a corporation.
Yeah, exactly. So, can you give me a thumbnail sketch of the process of how you engage a client and then work with a client right through from start to not finish, but the ongoing recommendations, what you find? Can you tell us what's involved in someone onboarding your solution to get truth about what is really working, what isn't in their marketing and sales and bottom line?
Yeah. A lot of it comes before the configuration of the software to solve their things. A lot of the work gets done before they say yes. So the first thing that people always notice about us is we're doing pretty well. We're scaling. I have one salesperson, no one in marketing. Our whole hypothesis is put really smart data scientists and analytic and technology professionals out into the field.
Mhm.
Um, and you will get back a better result. And that's been panning out for us, right? So we don't have a bunch of salespeople really hunting. We have people that go in and they kind of the sales part of it is their least favorite. They're diagnosticians,
Yep.
right? So they try to understand what are the goals. And I'll give you an example. There's a large laundry detergent that has a lot of market share.
Yep.
And if you walk into them and you talk, we're going to help you drive more sales, or we're going to help you drive your market share up, they're going to look at you and say, we don't care about that. We already have 70 plus market share,
Yep.
right? The value of increasing at 1% is not worth the cost that it would take to compel those last few people to use us.
Yep.
We want to get to profitability. And so that's an example of a configuring the solution to the objectives of the client, right?
Yep.
Um, then we to get the data, we always start with the API available data and the scrape available data because we can do all that work. So they have to grant us access. They
Yes.
can do it through our platform. They click the Amazon logo, they select the API, they enter in the key, and boom, I'm sucking all the data out. So they don't have to run around grabbing data from everywhere and emailing it to us.
Yep.
And then there's a learning period where I'm just observing, and our system every hour it runs through about 25,000 iterations of the model, trying to arrive at a best fit. Because there's a lot of correlation in the methodology, there's always risk of correlation's great because it can be ubiquitous, and it's terrible because if your business is doing well and the rooster crows every morning, the one thing you'll try most to do is save the rooster's life, right? Every morning. So you don't let that rooster die. Like the correlation will be like rooster crows, business grows, right?
Yep.
So we do these things called synthetic testing, and that's how we get to causality. And we introduce that to pick the models that are best representing the truth.
Right.
Then we push it live. And then every day or every week, we go through every single campaign they have, assign an incrementality score, and we make a prediction. If you make these changes, you'll get this many more sales.
Right.
And what's really cool, I think, about my product team, the decision they made, we make everything transparent.
Yep.
So rather than trying to defend it, we invite the clients into the process. We let them know that machine learning is not perfect. Sometimes we're going to get some things wrong. And we work together to get this thing set up perfectly for their business and functioning at the most optimal rate. So our system actually sends you an alert if the model loses confidence. It goes, hey, whoa, something changed.
Right.
We don't think we're making good decisions this hour, right?
Yep.
And that's been the process.
Yep.
I don't know if it fully answered your question.
No, that's good. And so basically you start collecting data and then you try to make sense of it. And then you're going, oh, this doesn't make sense. So actually you're trying to get to the best point of truth that you possibly can get by looking for outliers. Does this make sense? Until you get to a point going, I'm confident in the data. Is that where you try to get to?
I'm confident in the data, and I'm confident in the methodology that has been selected to determine the outcome, right? Because there's a lot of algorithms running. You got to make sure that those are tuned properly and that they're rendering really good recommendations. At
Yep.
the end of the day, our system is saying move this money here to there,
Yep.
right? So you got to know that technology is making good recommendations,
Yep.
and it's based on good sound math.
Cool. So basically trying to go from very cloudy, blurry eyes, like waking up in the morning, to very clear eyes, like in the afternoon or lunchtime, you got sharp and you're going, this is truth as best it can be truth, because there is no absolute truth, of course, in terms of data, but maybe you're aiming for 98%, 99, I don't know. But so you're basically going, okay, I know what's going on and I trust it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole idea is we set out to make measurement that the CFO believes in.
Okay, and that's the accountant who is an attention to detail guy, and he will call bullshit if he detects there's any bullshit or lack of transparency. But you guys don't do that, of course. But I'm saying that
Yeah.
it's my brother's an accountant, so he and I have fun conversations because I'm big picture, he's small picture, and we eventually get to the truth together. But it's a lot of fun in the meantime. But you guys are both big and small, I suppose, in terms of what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to give a big picture of all the detail.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
So in terms of that, do you provide a dashboard that gives that sort of look into the ecosystem and what's working, what isn't? Do you provide them with a dashboard or not?
Yeah, absolutely. We
Yep.
actually do it at the campaign level again. Retail media, big spend, teeny campaigns.
Yep.
So there's thousands for a large brand.
Yep.
Um, and so we have ways of grouping them. Like
Yep.
oftentimes large brands will say, hey, we love your granularity. but we don't want to go through 2,000 campaigns. So group them as conquesting and branded, and they've got their own sort of taxonomy. And we group it into those taxonomies that align with how they operationalize their media organization.
Yep.
And then we give them their insights. And what we've been doing lately, which is super cool, is we've been trying to get them out of our dashboard and get our insights into the platforms that they use to buy and transact on their media.
Right.
So the whole thing is like, hey, don't even bother swiveling over to us. Now that you use the dashboard, your analytics team goes in and goes, yeah, I think it's still real. I think it's real. It's good, right? The dashboard has become the validation point,
Yep.
but let's just put the insights where you need them at the moment you need them.
Yep.
And now we're getting this huge uptick in utilization of the insights because we made them really easy to use.
In other words,
And
you make them easy to action.
yes, yeah, they're portable to the place where you're buying the media. And that's been huge. And I don't know that I've seen an incrementality measurement solution do that before. Maybe one has, but I haven't seen it. It's been a great unlock for us.
That's very cool. Now, let's stand back a little bit. And
Yep.
you're working with a whole bunch of, big players, a lot of data in the e-commerce space, online retail. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you must be getting some real insights into, not what happens on Monday, but what's happening as a trend. What are some of the big trends you are seeing? For example, are you seeing social media becoming so noisy that it doesn't make much difference anymore? Is the rise of AI and the mix of AI and search muddying the waters in terms of the effectiveness of SEO, search engines, in terms of producing, because what every retailer has tried to do in the past, online retailers, to try and get their product to appear on page one, right?
Yeah.
So because if you're on off page one, you're nowhere. So you got social, you got search, you got paid. Let's talk there, and then you got
Mm-hmm.
owned and earned. Okay, but let's talk about those three. What are the? Are you seeing any distinctive trends in basically what works and what doesn't in terms of ad spend, and
Yeah.
also earned as in search? In other words, because you've got to earn search, you don't. Okay, so can give us a little bit of insight on what you guys are seeing in the big picture on this.
It's a little bit of a back to the future, right?
Okay.
We're seeing things that there's great parallels in, like, say, search versus retail media, which is also 50% a search-based product. Um, in the sense that if you think about when Google was really getting rocket, right? Talking post GoTo and in sort of the precursors to that, Google's getting rocking, and all of a sudden, most consumers are going through Google on a regular basis. It becomes the center. The funnel disappears because everyone, as they go through the consideration set and everything, they come back through Google to get the information. So Google manages to put itself in the midst of all of this demand, and the reporting makes it look like search is driving everything
Yep.
because they're just taking credit when you click it. It's like, man, that we drove the sale. And what people figured out over time was, well, actually, if you cancel your TV campaign, they tend to search your products less. There's an interconnectivity with the other investment that's occurring. The big trend we're seeing is the marketers, again, retail media is the new shiny toy, right? And the way that retail media is measured by most, it gives it credit if that's the last place you went to research. And so retail media is getting an extremely large amount of credit.
Okay.
But
So can you tell us what retail media is like a suitcase? It's a suitcase word.
yeah,
Uh, Okay. We need to open the suitcase. What does retail media mean? Because there's many meanings for retail media. It could be.
there's too many. Yeah, it's a complex question, but the easiest thing is retail media is a lot of things right now. But if you actually look at the spend, most of the spend is people paying to have their products featured, put into prominent places on retailers' websites,
Right.
right? Now, retail media is saying, "Oh, we're interjecting this data into CTV, so that's retail media, and we're putting it everywhere." But forget about that. If you actually look at the spend, a lot of it's happening by paying to be in the right spot on Amazon.com, on Walmart.com.
Well,
And
that is really interesting because you said the old is now new, or
it is.
new is actually old. Sorry. Okay, because basically, let's think about what's been going on the shelves of a bricks and mortar store. Okay, it's placement. You pay for placement. So you're talking about, instead of paying for placement in a bricks and mortar store, there's another layer to this: placement on a digital store. Is that correct?
100%. And that's why it's merchandising half the time. It's not even media. That
Yes.
was when I wanted to say the F word. That's why our methodology is key too, because we take into consideration the competitors wrapped around you. What's their price? Did someone start running a special?
Mm,
Right. And they're trying to measure it like reruns over Leave It to the Beaver in 1970s. You know what I mean? It's like that methodology doesn't work. This is like right there at the cash register.
exactly.
And and it's getting over credited, quite frankly. It doesn't mean it's not valuable, but it means that there's an interconnectivity, and you have to understand the impact of TV and CTV and your in-store shopper marketing and your search and your social and all of that, and how that all comes together, and you need to play the symphony. You
Yes.
can't let all these people go out with their instruments into different rooms and strum away their favorite tune, put it together, and expect to have a good sounding symphony, right?
Yep.
You need a conductor. And
Yeah, love the
that's
analogy.
what I mean by a return to that's what I mean by Back to the Future. We went through this with Google.
Yep.
Google was God's gift to advertising. If I could put more dollars in Google, I would. And then people learned, hey, you know what? When you turn off the rest of the marketing, my Google performance drops,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And that's where we are today.
Cool. Because the big challenge has always been attribution. Where was the first click?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's quite often hard to know because someone's searched for a product, they've read a review on YouTube or watched a review on YouTube, they've done a Google search and the product brand names popped up. They've then got an email or a cookie that sent email, which has turned up. In other words, it's the symphony that matters, not the one thing that matters. Is that correct?
It is. And in accepting that and then pursuing the truth is those are the brands that are going to win.
Yes.
Those are the ones that are, at the end of the day, you can buy as much advertising as you want, but if you're not selling your product, whether through the decay of your business model or the fact that the retailers might be getting dollars for your media, but they're not getting the back end cut that they get on the sales, one way or the other, you're not going to perform as well. So you have to understand that to continue to protect your positioning on their sites, to continue to perform. I mean, it's all a virtuous cycle.
Yes.
Um, and we're seeing people wake up to that. I just talked to this really, really smart woman. I can't say her name because it was about kind of a partnership, but super smart. She's been in the industry. She's been in this industry, the media industry, for a long time. And she's actually the one that goes, of course, your company's starting to get a lot of attention. We're 7 years into this retail media thing. That's around when people start getting serious about measurement as new media comes up, and
Yep.
it's just a pattern.
Yep. So incremental really is the conductor that brings the best out from the symphony by identifying where the best tunes are coming from, and then uh, fine-tuning the orchestra after much practicing and optimization.
Yeah, we try. We try to bring a lot of humility. It's not an easy problem to solve.
Yep.
We think we've got a pretty darn good solution, but
Yep. Yeah, it's very interesting because I've been involved in digital for quite a long time now. I actually put together what was it, seminars back in the 90s about how to use the internet back then when I knew very little about it. I just thought it'd be good to run a conference. Um,
Yeah.
and I was dealing with it on with actually a bricks and mortar retailer that was very, very used fax machines for advertising. So there you go, fax machines now collecting dust in the bottom of cupboards, or else have been sent to the tip. But in fact, most children don't even know, teenagers don't even know what a fax machine is. So for me, the whole area is fascinating, and we're seeing, and now we're watching the impact of AI. Machine learning is the precursor and part of the symphony of AI, really. So, and on top of that, you add neuroscience and a lot of other things, but and large language models. But the interesting thing is, I've seen in search, for example, is that Google recently with updates has removed the search, well, the traffic results for a lot of information sites. The fact they're driving traffic more to, because information sites quite often had a button, buy this product, because that was placement on an information site. Google's going,
Yeah.
that doesn't matter too much. What we want now is we want to take you straight to the buy site. So they rank the buy site up and rank the media information site down, which has had a lot of bloggers and media companies, tearing their hairs out and poking their eyes out because it's just so painful. Traffic's dropped 50, 60% in some instances, and
It's
even more.
terrible. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen that sort of trend as well in terms of, basically
Yeah.
people going straight to the buy page? In other words, if you're an e-commerce site with a buy button, they rank that up, and then the site that was an affiliate site, for example, has actually had it ranked. Then basically some of them have disappeared almost.
Yeah, we're seeing a systemic attempt at collapsing the consideration period for a
Yeah.
purchase,
Yeah.
right? And that's happening at the expense, quite frankly, of the business model that funds the best content.
Yeah.
And that's not something we're saying. I mean, that's not anything novel. I'm acknowledging it. You just said it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't want to present that as something we discovered, but I will say that it's there in our data too, right? And
Interesting.
it's a shame. Um, and I don't quite know how this all pans out. To answer your question though on LLMs, because I diverted from your two questions ago and gave you a different answer.
Right.
We haven't seen a large, sort of we don't see this big decline in the effectiveness of paid search for advertisers shipping their, the traffic into the Amazons of the world. That just we haven't seen that collapse yet as a result of Chat GPT.
Right.
Um, you know, um, I can't say we've tried to run specific analysis on it, but nobody's come into my office and said, "Hey, wow, you know what? Search isn't working anymore. The volumes are lower." We just haven't seen that yet, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really fascinating to watch, and part of what we're looking at doing and we are doing now is actually making ourselves more an e-commerce site, actually, but selling services and information in small snippets. Um, so, but Google's told everyone to provide great content, and then they've actually then decimated the people that provided great content. And we're talking Forbes, we're talking a lot of big sites. Um,
yes.
then we're seeing
Yeah.
some what is quite dangerous area, and this is where it comes down to maybe the, the breaking up of these huge multinational global platforms such as Google and Microsoft and others and Apple, in that Google just bought Reddit. So Reddit's getting oh, no, they're totally independent. We're not giving them any priority. Well, just a few tweaks of an algorithm and Reddit gets 50 million views a day instead of, 10 million. So, you know, Google's old premise was do no evil. Now it's like make as much money as possible and decimate the rest, right?
Yeah. But don't they all start that way? I mean, Sam Altman, he's wonderful now. you know, like
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. And yet I'm an avid consumer of most of these products, and the products themselves give me joy. The business model implications give me heartburn,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So
Yep. And is it are we leaning more into the big boys and girls winning and the smaller player that's contributed to the content and the depth and breadth of the web that provided great insights, are they going to be, you know, decimated by this evolution that the bigger players are bringing in? The big get bigger and the smaller get smaller, and there's no middle ground, like losing the middle class in America or around the world. Okay, so uh, anyway, and we're, you know, I started to see the rise of algorithms in social back in 2013 when Facebook went public, because they then need to make money because they were basically, you know, it was a freemium model. Provide it for free, build your network, and then the network then becomes supercharged because it's now a global network. So we are seeing more and more the rise of algorithms everywhere, from buying plane tickets to train tickets, right? And beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I quite often go to incognito mode on my search because I know the algorithm's going to be messing with me, and you can see the price go up every time you do a new search, and going, shit, you're a
Yeah.
bugger.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you 100%. I mean, it's an interesting world we're in. And, um, everything you said could happen.
Yep.
The only thing that I take solace in is when you look at every single new technology, there's some version of doom and gloom. And I'm not saying there aren't bad consequences to new technology. There usually are, and some good things. But the one thing that has been consistent throughout time is everyone's prediction about it was never correct,
Yes.
right? Like the one thing that we can count on not happening is what everyone's saying is going to happen,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
Um, but it'll be an interesting world. And sometimes, yeah, tell you the truth, I'm a little nervous for my kids.
Yeah.
I figure I've only got a few good years left before this thing doesn't know what's going on. So, I'll be blissfully ignorant,
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. For me, a little bit. I'm along the lines more of a utopian future, but and dystopian is also part of the conversation. But the truth's going to lie somewhere in the middle. To predict exactly what's going to happen is a fool's errand. And
Yeah.
you only have to look at the likes of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who sadly died last year after nearly reaching 100. Um, Gee, those guys are so wise. They said, "Don't ask us to predict the future. We'll just see what works today and what has worked for a century or more, including psychology, economics, maths." And I've just finished reading Charlie Munger's book called Poor Charlie's Almanac,
Yeah.
and it is fascinating. I felt like I'd opened a holy grail of wisdom, because he uses 90 to 100, or did 90 to 100 mental models to actually in their decision making, and that include economics, psychology, um, maths, science. The list goes on, um, and fascinating. And if you look at people trying to predict, and this is where we're seeing the fall of things like active investing. Active investors are trying to predict the future, and we know how well that normally goes. So passive investing is about investing what works and basically is playing into the market. But anyway, it's another thing. But for me, um, I've certainly am taking a much more holistic approach to it and leaning into the future, not running away from it. Um,
100%. It's your
yeah,
only choice, right?
yeah,
Life is better if you develop some optimism. I will tell you though, there is a good Charlie Munger quote about predicting things.
yeah,
And I think about it a lot. Which is he said, if you want to predict people's behaviors, look at their incentives. They follow them every time,
yes, yep,
right? And we've been sort of circling around that thematically here in talking about either the seller of media or where Google's business model has gone or Facebook's algorithms. I mean, at the end of the day, they all align to Charlie's rule.
yep,
Um, and just so you know, if you ever make it over here, you're definitely having beers with my head of sales and I, or my one sales guy, because he has turned me on to reading everything Charlie Munger ever wrote. I mean,
yeah,
he just adores.
yeah. Well,
So
for me, there's a lot of information, but there's very little wisdom. And I'm actually in the middle of studying what is wisdom, because that's a fascinating topic in its own right. And again, is one of my favorite terms at the moment is a suitcase word, because we use things like happiness and success and we all think we know what they are, but everyone has a different interpretation of that. And that's why you call it a suitcase word. You open up the suitcase and you discover many meanings. And that's why I asked you that before about.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, poor Charlie's Almanac was like opening the holy grail of wisdom for the last century that he's seen. In fact, his reading was Benjamin Franklin's Almanac as well. Um,
Great.
and they were both generalists. So for me, you just talked about incentives. So why did companies win? Well, it's not just data and conversion funnels, it's actually things like psychology. So what do you incentivize people for? Well, you incentivize that, and that's what you get. So it is absolutely fascinating. So, Poor Charlie's Almanac recommendation, anyone listening, and I'm sure you'd enjoy it. So,
Yeah. No, I'm on it. That's a guarantee.
so I can see why you are where you are today. In other words, what the call was. It sounds like it was a creeping realization of something better needed to be done in your industry regarding data and insights into what works and what doesn't with advertising for retail and online stores. What have you learned along the way? Can you sum that up in two or three pithy um, uh, insights? What's some of the biggest learnings you've had? And there's a second question after that is who's helped you the most in this journey at Incremental and before?
Yeah. I mean, probably the biggest lesson I've learned, I think you even said it in your introduction, is failing at something you care terribly much about is really hard. And
Oh,
when you give a little retrospective to it later, it's always that moment of big leap, of big growth, right? And so I've learned not to be scared of failure. Whereas I think when I was young, even when I was failing, I spent most of my time trying to convince everyone I wasn't, and so
ego,
that's
ego got in the way.
yeah. That's number one. Number two is, and I actually like to think that I've got a bunch of A students here. I've been blessed with just an incredible team.
Yes.
But number two is I would vastly prefer a bunch of B minus students that work really well together than a bunch of alpha A's
Yeah.
that are incongruous when it comes to setting up processes and getting things done.
Okay.
Right. It's all about the culture and the people. And I think how people treat each other is really important
Yeah.
to building a successful company.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, I'm going to go a little farther, but just real quickly, I think that was glossed over by the dot-com bubble, right? Because that wasn't real business.
Yeah.
And so that culture of super genius was so celebrated back then.
Yeah.
I don't think that's real.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, which leads into your next question, is it doesn't matter where you are in your career. The best words you can ever say are, "Hey, could you give me a hand with this? Could you help me think through this?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, Going and asking for help and insight and feedback is more critical now that I have more authority than I've had in the past.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you have to have some failures to circle around and arrive at that conclusion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then as to who's helped me the most, the CEO of a company called X Plus One, which was that first machine learning company that I worked at, a guy named John Nardone. He doesn't just take my calls; he makes a lot of time. He
Wow.
enthusiastically takes time to sit down and walk through stuff, and he gives me very real feedback.
Yep.
Like, what are you thinking? He has told me before that you're not doing this part of your job properly based on what you described,
Yep.
right? He gives me real feedback, and that confidence in me to spend the time, because there's got to be something behind that. People don't like to waste time. And the investment that has been um, really, really special to me. And I've modeled a lot of my attempts at leadership after him. You know, he was very loyal to his employees. He put them first. A lot of the things that I learned from him, I've tried to bring into this company.
Yeah.
Um, but if I had to pick one, there's more. But if I had to pick one, he stands taller than the rest on the
Right.
mentors.
Yeah, it's good that to have someone that can give you insight and bring wisdom, because doing it on your own can be a lonely place. Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you was, are there any books or resources that have helped you as well in terms of, what books you've read, or anything else, resources, blogs, anything that has helped you as well that is a bit of a go-to or has been?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, and because I'm a little mad at myself, I don't read as much. I listen to more podcasts. I mean, I consume podcasts like crazy these last 2 years because I'm always on the go or in the hotel rooms or in airports, and they're very, very useful. And I've found some great ones there. I tend to listen to people talk about topics that I'm not qualified to necessarily listen to, and try to pick up as much as I can. And then on the book side, quite honestly, the reading that I do too is either dedicated to fly fishing or it's true fiction, right? And I could tell you a ton of things I've learned from novels, but I don't know that they're reference material. It's the experience of envisioning yourself in that character's shoes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. For me, reading's been a joy since I was 5. In fact, I became the librarian's best friend, I think, when I was about 6 at primary school, as we call it in Australia. And I've because I enjoy it so much, I feel guilty when I spend the time to read. But after reading Charlie Munger, how long he and Warren Buffett read, and how much Bill Gates reads, and going work for them, it works for me. So, and Charlie Munger's joke amongst his family was that he was a book with 2 legs sticking out. So,
that's actually pretty good.
but yeah, so the thing is, reading books is a creeping growth. You don't notice a difference tomorrow, but it'll turn up in a conversation next week. It'll maybe show up and being a little wiser next year. It'll give you insight. So I read quite a lot. I read up to 60, 70 books a year, and there might be 1 or 2 fiction in there. But for me too, along with Joseph Campbell being a fanboy, is things I've asked have been like, what's your purpose in life? And Joseph Campbell said, well, as humans, we really don't have purpose, but what we do have is we should follow our bliss. And that, in other words, that's your curiosity, what brings you joy. And I think out of that then comes the journey you should be on. And then that becomes your calling. You go from curiosity to being compelled, and that becomes your bliss, because we're all different. I think that's for me, and has been maybe a big discovery, because I felt guilty for following my curiosity, but for me, that's fed a lot of what I've done since I was 50, because I wanted to make money. I was following the wrong path, I suppose, as you like. But um,
Yeah.
the other thing you mentioned too, which I think is a big learning, is not to be afraid of failure. And I think that is a very wise, insight. And my biggest learning and biggest growth and opportunities have happened because I had huge failures. Marriage broke down, business failed, and I really wanted them all to work. But in looking in the rear vision mirror, I'm glad they didn't work, because now I've had the most fantastic journey since I was 50. Um,
Awesome.
and you don't learn out of comfort. You only
Yeah.
learn out of
It's a great
pain.
one. That's a pithy answer. I wish that's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Learning is forged in the fires of pain.
Exactly.
I like that.
And it's a paradox. So,
Yeah.
and we all want certainty as humans, and that's really but there is no certainty. And yeah. So I'm going to ask you one more question to wrap this up. And I ask all my guests, and I think I know what your answer is going to be because you've already told me, and it's a guess, but at any rate. So if you had all the money in the world, what would you do every day that would bring you deep joy and happiness?
More time with my kids.
Okay.
I'm sorry, like it's not a money-based answer, but it is.
They
Do
don't
you know
need,
what I mean?
it does not need to be a money-based answer. That is not, it's
Yeah.
not a trick question.
It would be more time with my kids. You
Okay.
know, it's a blink of an eye. So, you know, when you have these young kids, it's so hard. You
Yep.
know, they're keeping you up all night and everyone goes, yeah, the days are long, but the years are short. And you're like, yeah, whatever, with your little one liner. And then your kids are 14 and 16 and you go, how the hell did that happen?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And so now it's kind of every business trip, everything. You're like, oh, I want to be home. I want to see how things are going. I want to hear my kid launched a camp with his buddy, and he got a bunch of 7 to 11-year-olds there this morning. And I wish I could have seen that, man. You know, like, I want to hear how camp went, so that would be it. That's what money would buy me.
Okay. In other words, it comes down to relationships,
Yeah.
and that's really what matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basically confirms Harvard research of 87 years that showed that happiness comes out of relationships. That is the one that brings us most joy. And you've just basically uh, revealed the wisdom of nearly 90 years of Harvard research. So very, very well done. David, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I have enjoyed our bouncing conversation and the insights you provided. And I look forward to maybe that beer during fly fishing. I have done fly fishing. I did it for the first time in Montana about 5 years ago.
Good place to start.
And yeah, I think it's all downhill from there because I caught 6 in 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's incredible.
yeah, and I did it with a tech guy and me, and we had a fly fishing coach because it was at an influencer camp on a dude ranch in Montana. So I was very spoiled, very grateful. Um,
Yeah.
the tech guy, he's remained nameless. He caught everything, including logs, trees, and branches, but not a fish. And yeah, so he had it's very unkind, but he was unco, as we say in Australia, which means uncoordinated. And as we know, fly fishing requires a certain amount of coordination. But I loved my first and only fly fishing expedition. So you must enjoy the peace and quiet of that.
I do. I do. I love it. You can clear your mind because you have to pay attention to everything.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a real pleasure. It really has. Like I enjoy talking to you, so I hope we talk again.
I look forward to it. So I'm sure you're going to have some insights in 12 months. So let's keep in touch. And David, it's been an absolute joy. One-on-one conversations for me like this from around the world with wise, smart people. Mate, I'm grateful every day to be able to do this. And this is something I would do without getting paid. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thanks. I'll just pause here. Thank you, David. It's been absolute joy.